I'd like to start off by thanking the Southwest Collective and Madison Saavedra from Block Club Chicago for helping to set up this forum. I know it's a lot of work, and I really appreciate all their effort. I'd also like to thank my student Ashley, who will be here shortly after the basketball game, for volunteering to help moderate the forum. We here at Curie are happy to welcome all the candidates to our school. Curie is the largest school on the Southwest Side and an important hub in the community. Our students not only come from Archer Heights, they come from all over the Southwest Side. In addition, as a democracy school, Curie is also committed to helping our students and families participate in the democratic process. For these reasons, we appreciate the candidates taking the time to listen to questions and concerns from members in our community. We look forward to a productive discussion tonight and hope that candidates will return to Curie for future forums to inspire our youth to continue to be involved in our democracy. Thank you. Now I'd like to take a, Now I'd like to take a moment to pass it over to Jamie and Myra from the Southwest Collective.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. My name is Jamie Grotz-Searle. I'm the founder and the executive director of the Southwest Collective.
And my name is Myra Avila, and I'm the board chair. Our local community group was built on the belief that we need to break down the barriers that keep our neighborhoods isolated from one another, and that rob us of the kind of resources that other parts of the city take for granted.
Facts. We want to build community across neighborhood boundaries and across ward boundaries, which is why we're excited to welcome candidates tonight from the 12th, 13th, 14th, and the 15th wards to this unique Aldermanic candidate forum.
During breaks or after the forum, we'd love to talk to you about the work we're doing throughout the Southwest Side and to hear about the priorities that are for the neighborhood we all call home.
So come see us in the hallway. We'll have voter registration forms, masks, COVID tests, and a lot more. And now, please welcome our esteemed moderator for tonight's forum, Madison Saavedra of Block Club Chicago, who has highlighted so many important issues for us here on the Southwest Side. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Jimenez and Jamie and Myra, for those opening remarks. Like they said, my name is Madison Saavedra. I'm a reporter with Block Club Chicago. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan online newspaper dedicated to bringing hyperlocal coverage across the city. So I report on the Southwest Side, and I am honored and humbled to be moderating tonight's event. It's great to see so many people here excited to hear about these candidates. Before we get into questions, I'd like to go through the structure for tonight's forum. We'll be having 4 separate sections, 1 section for each ward, and we're going to go in numerical order. So we're going to get started with the 12th ward candidates, followed by 13th, 14th, and then 15th. We did invite candidates from the 23rd ward as well, but both the incumbent and the challenger could not make it. So the structure goes as follows. Each candidate will have 60 seconds for an opening statement, and then they each will have 90 seconds to answer each question. We do have a timekeeper, so if candidates go over their time, gentleman over there will hold up a green card for when you have 30 seconds left, the red card when you are out of time. Please don't make me cut you off. We do have some prepared questions, but the majority of these questions were submitted by the audience, either ahead of time or via comment card. You should have gotten a comment card when you walked in, but if you need another one, they will be at the table in the back. To the audience, please refrain from applauding or booing during the forum itself, but please feel free to wave your red and green flags. Red if you disagree with what's being said, green if you agree. And thank you so much to Curie for hosting, and to the student Ashley Mondragon, who will be joining me up here later on in the forum to take turns asking questions. And lastly, I would really encourage the candidates to answer these questions as specifically and directly as possible, so the folks here can get to know the best sense of who you are and what you stand for. So with that, we'll get into it. So like I said, we're going to start off with the 12th ward. The 12th ward primarily covers Brighton Park and McKinley Park. We have Alderwoman Anabel Abarca and Julia Ramirez here tonight. Thank you both for attending. So the first question, a majority of families in the 12th ward and throughout Chicago are rent burdened. What would be your plans to make housing more affordable in the 12th ward? And we will get started with Alderwoman Abarca.
Thank you, everyone here. Buenas noches, gracias por estar aquí, and ni hao ma for those who celebrate Gung Hei Fa Choi. I would say that as alderman, I have already begun to ensure that residents are not rent burdened. One of the primary items that I am focusing on is the rezoning of the residential districts, and that is because they are limited to an RS3, which is, as you know, does not include density. Oftentimes, rent is too high, and that's because we do not have the capacity necessary. In order to make sure that rent, remains low, what we can do, and what I can do as alderman, and I'm going to, is propose that the accessory dwelling unit ordinance is expanded so that it's not just a pilot program on the north side. That means that we would help families with rezoning so that way they can actually build affordable housing into their existing units, but also ensure that developers who come to the ward and
wrap it up
do zoning adhere to the ARO ordinance. Thank you.
I want to first start off with displacement is a huge concern on the southwest side, in particular in McKinley Park and Brighton Park. And so what I really want is that we need to create stability for our families. That's number one. But we want to make sure that they have other resources so they aren't just staying in the 12th ward just because it's affordable now, but that they want to stay because we have really good schools, we have after-school programs, and they want to stay and have a thriving life. And the ways in which we're going to do this is that we're going to protect our families. We're going to protect the most vulnerable, and we're going to protect our seniors. We have many seniors who vote in the 12th ward, and we want to make sure that they have the independence to pay their bills and to be taken care of. And so what I want to do is work with the state. We want to create caps for the most vulnerable in our communities, not only to just pay rent, but we want to create a pathway to ownership. I think it's really important for the families that have been there a long time, like mine. My family has been there for 50 years in Brighton Park. We want to make sure that people have the space to keep their families. And I also want to mention we need to create more affordable units, but we have a mad asphalt, and so it's making it very, very difficult to work with CHA.
Next question. Archer Avenue is a main thoroughfare connecting the southwest side, but it can be dangerous for pedestrians and cyclists. Since the 12th ward has a large portion of Archer Avenue in its ward, what would you do as alderwoman to improve safety along Archer? And this time we'll begin with Ms. Ramirez.
I want to make sure that we start prioritizing pedestrians and cyclists. And so for way too long, we've been prioritizing cars. And with something like the mad asphalt and making sure that we have less cars on the road. I think a really big part of building community is making sure that people actually are engaging with one another, that they're walking down Archer Avenue and they have something to walk to. And so I want to make sure that I'm supporting the bike grid now. I want to make sure that we go green in different capacities, and one of those things is working amongst ward lines. As many of you guys know, our issues aren't bounded by the wards, and so it's important now more than ever, as City Council is changing, that we have somebody that is willing to be collaborative, that we don't have people that are on the inside that are working for people, and that they're working for the residents and the citizens of all of the southwest side. And so it is my promise that I work with all wards to make it make sense. We need to stop building infrastructure that ends at a certain place. We need to build all the way to Curie High School, and that's something that I'm committing to. Thank you.
So as a lifelong CTA rider and a bicyclist myself, I understand the importance of having protected bike lanes, so protected concrete barrier bike lanes. And so I've actually started working with the Chicago Department of Transportation as well as the Chicago Department of Planning and Development to have an infrastructure of bicycle lanes going down Archer, Western, Kedzie, 35th Street, and Pershing so that it's extended. And the reason that we want to have so many connected streets is because these are the ones that connect to our Orange Line stations. They also connect to our commercial corridors. So I would say that in order to ensure that the 12th Ward not only has bicycle lanes, what I've already begun to do is work with the city to announce it, but I've already begun speaking with our senators, so Senator Cervantes, our state representatives, and our Cook County commissioners. I think one of the most important things is also ensuring that we don't work in a silo. And that's why at the very beginning of when I announced my campaign, I reached out to the elected officials in 11, 22, 25, 15, and we have a great working relationship. So now as an alderwoman, we have the capacity to work together, and we are doing so, which is why Alderman Lee and I are in discussions to ensure that the bicycle lanes on Archer don't just end at Ashland, they extend, and
Couple more
likewise on the
seconds.
southern end. Thank you.
How would you maintain the vibrancy of economic corridors in the ward and support local businesses?
So one of the things that I just announced on Monday was the rezoning of the 35th Street corridor. As you know, 35th Street was rezoned, is actually downzoned 30-something years ago, and that has prohibited business development. And so I've actually announced that we're going to be rezoning it before the end of the year. It'll be a community-driven process, and so the community, as well as homeowners, renters, businesses, but also, the organizations that are in our communities as a whole, so not just McKinley Park, but Brighton Park as well, because it does affect them, are going to be part of the process to rezone it so that it does create a walkable, livable commercial corridor. Additionally, I've already announced that part of my goal as alderman is to create a business incubator, and that is for MBE, WBE, minority businesses, so that they can have a one-stop shop in the 12th ward to be able to have to get their businesses started.
I'm actually very happy that she started rezoning, but I think that when you start in a new role, it's important to ask people what they want before choosing for them. I think for way too long in a place like the 12th ward, we've had elected officials that tell us what is best for us, and so we need a community needs assessment right away. We want people who have been deeply disenfranchised within our communities to be asked what they want. I think that there's huge empowerment about including people in the process. We want to make sure that people have ownership. And so when we're building this business corridors, we want to think about the people who need to legitimize whether they're entrepreneurship, our street vendors. How do we create space for people who have been giving us so much for so long? And it's not really just about opening up a place. It's like, what happens afterwards? Do people have the infrastructure to stay open? Things are very much inflated, and so I want to make sure, as I've been knocking doors and talking to businesses, people say, I've gone to the alderman's office. They haven't helped me with a grant. I need financial literacy. And so I want to be the alderperson that when people need help, that I respond, and that we allocate the resources, and that I'm in City Hall making sure that I'm working at all capacities to get the resources that people need to stay open and to have thriving businesses. And that includes women, undocumented folks. Everybody needs to be part of this process, and we need to circulate our wealth within the 12th ward.
How would you address environmental concerns in the 12th ward, specifically concerns that have been raised about matte asphalt and similarly lead pipes across the southwest side? Alderwoman Abarca, we'll begin with you.
As many of you know, my opponent has been endorsed by Alderman Cardenas. Alderman Cardenas, he ended up taking money from Mike Taden, who ended up putting in the matte asphalt on Pershing. And as many of you know, matte asphalt is near a park, McKinley Park. They're near residents, they're near schools, and we need to get rid of the matte asphalt. And so not just funding the Department of Environmental Health, but making sure that people are representing us in the right way. We can have all the departments in the world, and we can make sure that, there's somebody overseeing it, but do they have our best interests? And I want everybody to keep that in mind, is that, the experience that we have, it's really about making sure that we put community first. And so when I'm thinking about our environmental corridors, I want to make sure that we have zoning processes to stop anything like the matte asphalt ever coming into our communities again. The 11th ward ends up they have an Amazon. And so there's all these trucks that go in and out of our community, and it's a heavy burden. And I believe, why do they put it in our communities? Because nobody has actually stood up. And so I want to make sure that an alderwoman like myself does not have to fall in line with what Cardenas has done and what he is probably expecting somebody like Anabel to do. And let's put our best foot forward in creating green corridors in the 12th ward. Thank you so much.
Well, I guess I would just like to clarify that my name is Anabel Abarca, and I'm not George Cardenas. And so while it's certainly an endorsement, I am my own person. Not all Latinas are alike. In regards to the environmental issues, I would say that I'm the only candidate here that has firsthand experience with zoning phase 1 environmental reports and actually understanding the issues that Superfund sites and environmental remediation sites need that are in communities. Personally, I'm asthmatic, and I live across the street from Matt Asphalt. And I can tell you that when I was a second year in law school, I actually wrote a paper on the failure of the state agencies. That's state agencies, not the city. And that's because the state agencies failed us as a community to take our input. As an attorney, as a construction attorney, I'm happy to tell you that I am certainly not a fan of Matt Asphalt, and you are free to look at my D2s online and see who has and has not donated to me. But I guess the biggest thing I would tell you is that as an attorney, I have an ethical and fiduciary duty to the 12th Ward residents, which is to also say that I'm not going to tell you something that you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what it is that is actually possible. And so I'm not going to take the stance and tell you that it's going to be closed on day one. Instead, I'm going to tell you that we can do everything in humanly possible to enforce the actual regulation of the asphalt plant, and that's with working in state and state elected officials. Thank you.
How would you make zoning and development decisions in the ward? Would it be a community-driven process? If yes, can you describe exactly what that would look like?
As I mentioned on my website and to some of the community organizations that have come into the office, my plan is to have a community-driven zoning council, and that's where a zoning council made up from different parts of the ward are going to actually review different zoning proposals. And so that's going to be made up of very residents like yourselves, that's homeowners, renters, seniors. I specifically include teenagers because too often we ignore our youth and the students that we have living here and whether or not the development affects them as well. But that also includes our small businesses. So as far as the community process when it comes to zoning, I certainly don't intend on operating as a silo. I've already pledged to the organizations that have come and spoken to me that I'm going to have a zoning council, and that, again, they're going to be the ones who are leading the community and taking input from the community in order to make sure that the zoning process is different from what was here beforehand.
I think it's really important to note that zoning processes is probably something that a lot of people don't know how to participate in and aren't familiar with. And so it's really important for me that we start connecting what government office does to the community. And so that's informing people how the system works. People have been completely disenfranchised in our community. People do not vote in the 12th Ward. And so we are one of the lowest voting turnouts. And so I want to make sure that the people who have not been heard, have not been participatory, that we give them the education about being politically engaged. And so I think that that comes first. What I would not want is that, you know, the people that are most organized have the most say, and that we keep sort of the systems rolling as usual. I also want to take note that although Mike Taden maybe did not donate, the Damon Silos was actually going to be sold to Mike Taden, and I chose to sign the letter to stop that sale, and Anabel did not. And so although you may have not taken money, it's really important to stand up for people and what people are fighting for. People want to be heard. And so back to the zoning process, that is something that we will do. We are going to work really hard to make sure our disenfranchised people are part of it. You know, I knock doors and people say, you're only here for our vote. Well, that's not going to be the case anymore. We want to make sure that we're completely engaged. That's why I'm running. Although, you know, she may know that I don't have experience in different ways. Well, I have experience with community, and I'm going to make sure that people know how to work the system for us. And as it's ever changing, we're going to make sure that we change with it.
Next question is another one from our audience. How would you address public safety concerns in the ward, i.e. police strategies, violence prevention programming? Ms. Ramirez, we'll begin with you.
This is something that I've been working very hard. At the age of 18, I started organizing. And the reason why I started organizing is because, unfortunately, in a place like Brighton Park, where I grew up, I've seen the ways in which my family worked really hard to keep us safe. And I just don't believe that people should live in the 12th Ward being worried and not being able to build out community. And so the way that we're going to address public safety, because public safety is my highest priority, is make sure that we're working in a holistic way. And so one is expanding the opportunities for our young people. I'm going to make sure that I'm an advocate for One Summer Chicago and that we have jobs locally. Second, I'm going to make sure that we're funding intervention programs. And so a lot of the work that I do, I'm a social worker. I've done organizing. I work for the Chicago Public Schools. I've seen what works. I see that the care for our youth is so important, and I want to make sure that the city sees it as well. And third, I have worked with CAPS. I have worked with the DCOs and the community policing. Let's build our community trust and make sure that all the billions of dollars that we're spending on CPD is actually working when we need it to. Thank you.
And same question to you, Alderwoman Abarca.
Thank you. So I attended my first CAPS meeting in McKinley Park, I would say in probably 2013. And even then, public safety obviously has always been at the forefront of our residents. But I intend on taking a proactive approach. I don't necessarily believe that we need to increase either incarceration or police presence. One of the things that is most important in taking a proactive approach is working with our community, and that's actually ensuring that they're going to be heard and that they're going to be listened to when we actually go to public safety meetings. So one of the most important things that I've worked with in the 9th District, again, in taking that proactive approach, is to host events. So for example, we're doing a catalytic converter program where we're actually helping people so that we can deter crime. But it's not just about that. It's also about ensuring that the people who are coming into the neighborhoods and actually committing crime, that we're giving opportunities to our young people so that they don't go into that, so that they have the opportunities much more so than even I did, for example. One of the more important things when it comes to at least policing is actually having police officers that walk our beats. As a homeowner and as someone who has spoken with
Just
many
a couple
times,
more seconds.
I would say that our homeowners want to be able to see the police officers, and talk and be able to talk to them.
Food insecurity has become an even more pressing issue in recent years, and many Southwest Side residents are not eligible for certain federal programs because of their immigration status, not meeting income requirements, or other factors. Similarly, people tend to live in food deserts because grocery stores are closing or they were never there to begin with. As a city council member, how would you address food insecurity in your neighborhood? Alderwoman Abarca, we'll begin with you.
So one of the things that I did as chief of staff was actually bring the first farmers market pop-up to the 12th Ward. And the reason that I did that is because I personally have experienced food insecurity. I know firsthand what it's like to have to wait and to actually have a limited number of funds. And, law school certainly teaches you a lot about law, but it also, unfortunately takes out a good chunk of your income. And so I have firsthand experienced food insecurity, which is why I actually work with several of our departments, because not only do we want to have open spaces that are available for community gardens, but we want to change the program where the vacant lots that are no longer being prioritized for the homeowners that live next door to them. We want to make sure that they are able to buy those so that they can create community gardens. We also want to make sure that things like the merger of Jewel and Kroger don't happen, and the reason we don't want that to occur is because those are that's when desert islands end up happening due to the merger. So you end up having communities that no longer have a grocery store. And then finally, you want to have things like not just farmers markets, but you want to make sure that the food distribution, whether that is through nonprofits or the city, actually happens on an equitable basis. It's oftentimes too many people who you don't assume are food insecure actually are, and so...
Just a couple more seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you. Same question to you, Ms. Ramirez.
Yes. At the start of the pandemic, I unfortunately seen the ways in which our families were deeply impacted. And these issues didn't start in 2020, but they were definitely exacerbated. So people were having a hard time taking time off of work. They didn't have enough protection at work, and so people were getting fired, people were getting laid off, and so people were having a hard time putting food on the table. And so I'm happy to know and happy to work alongside leaders like Increase the Peace, who are here tonight, and that we had pop-ups, food drives, we met the people where they were at, and that's the most important thing. But the other thing is that I don't want, and I want to be as an alderwoman, is make sure that we're not working reactionary, that we have preventative measures, because if this ever happens again, we will be ready. And so some of the things I want to do is have staple food pantries and work with the Chicago Food Depository. I want to make sure that we're incentivizing our grocery stores. That way we have healthy food options for our youth. And then third, I want to support the McKinley Park Garden and make sure that we're re-envisioning our vacant lots and have youth programming and have youth initiatives that make sure that urban gardening is the way of the future.
Thank you both. Next question. How would you work with other Southwest Side City Council members to address issues that affect the entire region?
Our issues are not bounded by our wards, and so I want to make sure that as we're re-envisioning what City Council is going to look like, that I'm part of this progressive slate that works together. And it's not really about, having ward nights or having these rezoning processes, but having a vision of what things haven't looked like. And so let's not use the things that haven't worked well, right? So let's get rid of the old. We've already had 20 years of this past alderman and administration that have been doing things that have not been working for us. And so I am going to be sure that I'm a collaborative person. I've been doing that throughout all of my career. I've been working all through the city. I lend myself to wherever I can to make sure that I'm a strong voice and I'm an advocate. And I think that that's what people are looking for in city council, not people who have career political ventures, but rather somebody that's in tune, somebody that has the experience on the ground and making sure that the system is working for us. And I'm hoping that that everybody all throughout the Southwest Side and all the other candidates that are here today that are progressive minded, that we can all win and that we can all push our city forward to make it work for us. Thank you.
Same question to you, Alderwoman Abarca.
Thank you. So I think one of the benefits of public service, and that starts when you're really young, is that you start to see how you can work together with people that don't necessarily agree with you, which is something that unfortunately is lacking in our government at all levels today. And so you have to really see that there has to be compromise and a collaboration, which is one of the reasons why when I not only started running for alderman, but when I became alderman, is I reached out to the elected officials, not just on the Southwest Side, but actually across the entire city, because too often we ignore that the problems that affect the city as a whole, they come localized, but we can't actually work with them. So, one of the first things that I did is I literally made 49 other phone calls to the other aldermen to ask them and to offer my help in terms of whatever it is that was coming up at the city council. And so now I really benefit at the moment, and the initiatives that we're taking from the relationships that I've been building, not only as alderman, but prior to it. One of the things that I most pride myself on is the relationships that I have with different levels of government, because that's where we get the resources for what we need. Not everything is going to come from the city. We have to make sure that we have, relationships with our congressional officials, with our state elected officials, with our county officials, which is why I've already met with Senator Cervantes and the Congressman Curie, and why we have actual, initiatives to work with others. One of the best things that I would say as alderman is that I'm showing that approach, which is, as you can see on Friday, we're having a resources fair headed by the Senator Cervantes, but with other elected officials at different levels.
Thank you both. And our last question. Will you commit to regular town hall meetings and community meetings if you were re-elected or elected as alderwoman? Alderwoman Abarca, we'll start with you.
Of course, there is no question about that. We currently have ward nights every Monday. We do precinct walks, but we also are planning to have community meetings both for the McKinley Park and the Brighton Park areas, in addition to, like I said, the councils that I'm creating, one for the zoning processes, but also for education, our youth, and for our seniors. I think it's important to make sure that different residents have a venue in which they feel comfortable to be able to speak, not only just on larger community issues, but also for the issues that affect them at their age, at their economic level, at whether they're employed or unemployed. So I absolutely commit to not only community meetings as a whole on a quarterly basis, but ward nights as well. And one of the things that I am going to be doing is having small business workshops, and that would be on a monthly basis because so often many of our small businesses do not actually know how to work the process. Thank you.
Ms. Ramirez, same question to you.
Yeah, alongside town hall meetings, I want to make sure that I'm meeting people where they are at. And so like I was saying, we can post something on social media or we can have something on the website, but it's not actually truly accessible and people actually don't feel invited to. One of the main reasons that I'm running for alderwoman is because people have felt unheard, and that's really the organizer. I'm an organizer myself, and I want to make sure that everybody is included. There is a forum at Curie High School, actually put on by organizers, and I really push Anabel Abarca to be there. We want to be there for 12th Ward. We want to be there for the people that are speaking out the most. And so it's really important to just engage and educate people. And so I don't want to just kind of, meet me where I'm at or meet me at my office. Where can I meet you where you're at? What do you need from me? And actually provide the resources to get politically engaged long term.
So, being an alderman, it's been 5 weeks, but I want to say that as a whole, I'm a Chicagoan. I'm a Chicagoan and I'm a South Sider, and I ride the Orange Line and I took the Blue Line every day to school. I am an asthmatic and I walk my dogs around the park. And so being an alderman really entails much more than talking points on Twitter and Instagram. Being an alderman often requires, having the compassion and the ability to listen to people and to see what it is that they need, but also to be able to act on it and to do so in a way that is actually collaborative and that is not going to be pushing away others. I think it's very easy to put out, talking points on Twitter and to, have a supposedly a forum that is unbiased, but I think one of the biggest things about being an alderman is that you have to actually work with all sorts of people, and so that's been my plan from the very beginning. It's why I've walked all 22 precincts, and it's what I've been doing for the past 10 years.
Thank you all so much for coming. Forums like these are so important, and so I really push all the 12th Ward residents to go to Kelly Park, and let's make sure that our voices are heard. I know that I have the vision. I know that I have the plan that includes all of you to make it happen. See, on the Southwest side, we can have fully funded schools, we can have mental health clinics, we can have a youth center, but we all have to work together. And so I think it's important that our communities are tired to see the things that have not worked. And unfortunately, my opponent is part of the things that have not worked. And I want to say that my community sent me here. I was not appointed. And so it's really important for us, early voting started today, that you guys vote, and you guys vote until February 28th and send me to City Hall so we can all make it happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. So that concludes the 12th Ward portion of this forum. Thank you again to our candidates for attending and for answering these questions, and to the audience for submitting such thoughtful, insightful questions. And yes, as Ms. Ramirez mentioned, early voting did begin today downtown, but early voting at the ward level begins February 13th, and anybody who wants to know where the 12th Ward early voting location is, it will be at the McKinley Park branch library. That being said, you can vote at any of the early voting ward sites. You don't just have to vote in your own, but if it's easier because that's where you live, the 12th Ward one is at McKinley Park Branch Library.